Carolina has just one commit in the class of 2025, Dixon, who's ranked 51st. But don't freak out.
This is Tyler Hansbrough, and you're listening to Locked On Tar Heels.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? It's Thursday, October 24th, 2024. Welcome into the Locked On Tar Heels podcast, the only daily North Carolina show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Shea, joined today by our good buddy, Coach Bill Robinson, head coach of the Milligan University Buffaloes and a 2-decade veteran of Carolina Basketball School. By the way, make sure to check out that book if you have not yet gotten it, authored by this man himself. Great stuff. Christmas is coming. You can put it under the tree or in a stocking. It's a perfect gift. Thanks so much for making us your first listener watch, because you're joining us at the place to get your Carolina content every single day. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Special shout out to all the everydayers with us and all the Locked On Tar Heels Discord members, as well as the Locked On Tar Heels insiders. Welcome in, everyone. Let's go. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Coming up on the show today, we're going to talk about recruiting. I know a lot of people are kind of in their feels right now because Duke has 3 guys already committed, and it seems like the sky might be falling. Coach and I are going to talk about why that's not the case. Then we want to talk about this season. There's a lot of, hey, Seth Trimble might be starting at the 3. Are we going to be really small? And can we make that work? We're going to unpack that and talk about if there's some comparisons and how we might be encouraged by those. And then wrap up the show talking about turnover percentage. And also Coach Rob and Milligan get started with their regular season slate tomorrow, Friday, down in Florida. And so we'll give some good wishes to Coach and the guys on the way out the door today as well. So Coach, a lot of folks are very concerned over not yet landing any of the big time recruits out of high school. Carolina has offered, I think it's 18 total players in the class of 2025. If you're Hubert Davis or Brad Frederick or Sean May or anybody else on that staff, are you freaking out or what? Tell me where you're at as a coach.
Yeah, recruiting it's an inexact science. And it's one of those things where you do your work and then you don't always see the fruit right away. One of the crazy things about recruiting, we had 2 kids we loved last year, 1 point guard, 1 post. And they were the 2 guys we spent the most time on, and we went after them hard, and we didn't get either one of them. And that's when we're at the same stage. You kind of that freak out stage saying, well, what's going to happen? And we ended up getting 2 players at those positions that were actually better than the 2 that we were trying to get. And patience along with it. And you do the work and again, we talk about faith sometimes on this show, and obviously Hubert's a man of God and a child of God. Lord's going to take care of him, and he's going to bring the guys that he wants him to coach, and he'll coach the guys that come to him, and they're going to be really, really good. So we just got to be patient, and we just got to sit back and wait for those guys, the right guys, to come. They don't want just the necessarily the best players. He wants to build a team. And even though he's reached out to these guys, it's all still part of the plan of how do you build a team at Carolina. And one of the very first conversations we had after he got the job, Hubert and I talked about, he said, how do I build a team using the transfer portal? Well, he's proven that he can do that. And he's proven that it's been a very valuable tool for him. So we got to trust him. We may have an opinion, we don't have a vote. So let's just sit back and just trust that he's going to get the team that we can all, continue to root for.
That's a great phrase. We all have an opinion, but we don't all have a vote. I think that is wisdom that Coach probably applies to a whole bunch of moments in life. I'm going to file that one away to tell my kids maybe tonight. And so that'll be good. But I love that word that you use there, Coach. Patience is, look, we're still so early in the cycle. And I think another point of it for me, as we think about the transfer portal era, is that a lot of players are going to continue to wait longer and longer to where they see like, what is the landscape going to look like next year? Because I might commit now and somebody in my position might decide to come back or might decide to be there's just so many variables at play. And so if I was a high school player, I would continue to wait. And I like your point too, is we are only seeing right now what's right in front of us. Who even knows what's still out there that's untapped or undiscovered, or even the guys that have offers that might ultimately commit. So I love that point. So, Coach, I'm right with you. Number one reason we shouldn't be concerned is because we need to be patient. But, Coach, I think there's another thing at play here, too, is that as we look at the most successful teams and players in this current transfer portal era, it's not always teams relying on on freshmen coming out of high school. Agree or disagree?
Oh, totally agree. And I think we can look at some of the examples recently of the best recruiting classes don't necessarily end up being the best teams. And I think Duke's become very famous for that now. And the preseason banners, that people joke about with what they've had great recruiting classes. And
Absolutely. No denying that, right?
no, it's amazing what they've done. And we respect that. But at the same time, who's playing better in February and March and hopefully into April? And that's really that's what the trick is now. How do you get that team mix of the balance of the transfer guys and the high school guys to put them back together? And we're doing the same thing at our level. How do you mix that together to get the very best talent, to get the very best team that you can do at the end? And talent's the number one factor in winning and losing. We know that. But how do you get a group of guys to all buy in? We talk about all in. How do we get everybody to be all in to be able to do what's best for the team?
Coach, when I look, as I was thinking about this question, I looked back at last year's consensus first and second team All-Americans. First team, R.J. Davis, senior. Zach Edey, senior. Dalton Connect, graduate. Tristan Newton, graduate. Jamal Shedd, senior. Second team, Hunter Dickinson, senior. Kyle Filipowski, the lone sophomore. Dayron Holmes, junior. Tyler Kolek, senior. Mark Sears, senior. Coach, that's one sophomore, one junior, and then a bunch of fourth and fifth year players. No freshmen that stood out at that level. That, to me, is also very, very telling.
No, definitely. And the guys that you want to be able to trust are guys that have already done it. So it's one of those things. The transfer portal is so valuable because you see the guys that have already played in college, have already been an impacted player, and can they make plays? Yes, you got to have players that can make plays. So when you see the examples of those guys already doing that, look at that first team. That first team's loaded. Those guys are. I mean, Connect has obviously proven he can play at the next level too. So
we just saw him score his first NBA buckets last night as we record this. Yeah.
So it's just so important to be able to get those, and they're men, physically, mentally, emotionally. It's a whole different level with those guys than trying to get that 17, 18-year-old kid who's in that first, it's not just the college basketball, it's the going to class, it's the being the big guy on campus, it's having to deal with all the outside voices in their head. Those juniors and seniors or fifth year guys have already dealt with all that. And it's a whole different level.
And something I didn't even think about until we're sitting here talking is, and this is total circumstantial and a small sample size, but of the first team consensus guys, 3 of them have only played at one school. RJ Davis, Zach Edey, and Jamal Shedd were only at Carolina, Purdue, and Houston. Obviously, Connect started at Northern Colorado and even lower levels before that. And Tristan Newton didn't play his whole career at UConn. But I think everything you said there, Coach, makes a ton of sense to me. And even as you look at the first team preseason All-America this year, obviously Cooper flags on that. I think a lot of people think he's just kind of different. And obviously it remains to be seen, but everything we've seen tells us he should be. But other than that, it's 3 of the same 5 that were on that first, or excuse me, 3 of the same 10 that were on the consensus first and second team last year. It's Mark Sears as the leading vote getter, RJ Davis second, Hunter Dickinson third, and then Auburn's Janai Broome and Arizona's Caleb Love at fifth, and then Love and Cooper Flagg were tied for fifth there. So again, this year we expect it once again to be, as you said, these grown men who have been in college doing it for a long time. Coach, do you expect, because this is the last year of the COVID eligibility, do you expect anything to start to change? Or do you think, because as you and I were talking about before we recorded, we obviously have the example of the Kentucky championship at 12 and the Duke championship in 15. Obviously, those teams also had some strong upperclassmen leadership, but we don't really have many examples of freshman-led teams doing it at the pinnacle of the sport. Do you expect anything to change going forward?
I think the whole landscape has changed to the point where you may get a freshman like a Cooper Flagg that will have a major impact, but it's going to be less and less where you have, 3 or 4 freshmen on one team all making an impact. And that's just the way it's going to go. I'm very glad the COVID extra year is finally done. It's so hard to keep track of what's going on with
Oh,
everything. And
Lord.
we actually have 3 graduate students on our team right now, and I think that number will go down again across the country. Um, and I think it's going to still progress towards the transfer portal being the very first option for most coaches. And if we're doing it at our level, that means everybody's doing it.
Yeah.
So it just makes it hard for those high school kids. And we talk about it all the time. If you get a high school offer now, if a high school kid gets an offer at this time of year, it's probably a pretty good idea to take it because come spring, it's really it's hit and miss from then on.
And so ultimately, it seems like the place you want these stud freshmen to be is not the key 3 or 4 guys you're relying on, but mixed in to supporting some returning talent, kind of like the Tar Heels have this year, where Ian Jackson and Drake Powell are going to be critical parts of this team, but not the guys that Carolina has to rely on first and foremost, because you got the ACC reigning player of the year. And that's what I think are going to be the teams that we see have the most success. Because obviously, you definitely want that NBA talent. You just don't want it to be numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4 on your points per game or minutes per game played. I think that's the big point we're trying to make. So ultimately, Coach and I have landed on here. I love this. Don't be concerned, because we need to be patient and because it's not proven to be a winning strategy. I love that, Coach. Well said. Now, as we think more about this year's team, after Seth Trimble's preseason performances, there's a lot of scuttlebutt floating around that maybe he should start at the 3, which would make Carolina pretty small in the backcourt and at the wing. So what we want to look at and talk about is that a winning strategy? And is it even possible for Carolina to do? Are there any other teams that are examples of that? We'll talk about that in just a second. And we'll do that right after I tell you about FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start this season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, you can view live play-by-play, and so much more on literally the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. How about some Final Four odds for you? Ironically enough, given our last conversation, Duke has the best odds right now at plus 175. As we just talked about, history tells us that maybe you should think twice before you place that one. Kansas and Houston next at plus 190. Then UConn at plus 210. Alabama plus 270, Gonzaga and Auburn at 420, and then come the Tar Heels along with Arizona at plus 500. If you want to get in on that action or anything else at FanDuel, go check it all out at FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. Coach Rob, following Seth Trimble's 33-point performance at Memphis last week, and given what he did in the blue-white scrimmage, there's been a lot of conversation about the possibility of Seth entering that starting lineup. And even if he's not, playing a lot of minutes with a 3-guard lineup of Cadeau, RJ Davis, and Seth Trimble. And I think there's a lot of fear and consternation about, hang on, that means we would have a starting backcourt and wing of RJ at what, 6 foot, Elliot at 6'2", and Seth at like 6'3". And, what do you do after that? Is it Cade Tyson, 6'5", 6'6"-ish, maybe Jay Wash at 6'10", 6'11", whatever he is. And I think there's a lot of concern that maybe that is not a viable, capable thing, at least in terms of the highest levels. And so my question to you, Coach Rob, is that possible? Is that a lineup that can win, or is that something that's just not sustainable?
I go back to a conversation I had with Coach Williams a long time ago talking about rosters. And one of the thoughts that he had is you put the best talent on the team on the floor and then figure it out. And if those 3 guys are the best 3 guards, the best 3 people at that playing at those 3 positions, you put them on the floor and then you go figure it out. And again, we've talked about tempo and playing fast. That would be an incredibly talented group. It'd be an incredibly fast group. I think you'd see getting out in the passing lanes more. I think you'd see tempo even after a made basket, seeing the ball being pushed and seeing a lot more open post, dribble drive. Because if you're saying, well, Seth's going to have a hard time at the 3 guarding somebody bigger, whoever's guarding him is going to have a hard time staying in front of him too. So if you get the ball to the paint, breaks everything down, then all of a sudden, you get an open jumper, one extra pass. RJ's now got a wide open look because somebody can't stay in front of, Seth. So it goes both ways. Yeah, it may be harder to defend the traditional way. There are ways to do that. But I do expect them to put the best talent they have on the floor and then just adapt the system to that. That's what coaching is.
And as I think about the defense of it, because I think that's where I don't think when anyone thinks logically about this, the offense you're probably not concerned about, but the defense, as you pointed out, probably is where the concern is. But Coach, I even started to think about in this conversation as I was laying in bed last night. I was like, just dreaming about what it could be. Is there a world in which that backcourt, that threesome, could be really disruptive? Because if Seth's in there, obviously he is your best proven individual defender, and so could they lock in and just, we kind of saw this against Memphis a little bit, where it's like the concern might be once you get into the half court, but if you can wreak some havoc before they can even get into the half court, you might be setting yourself up for some good stuff.
Yeah, and you don't match up Seth against the small forward because he's playing small forward at the offensive end. I put Seth on the ball and make him just dog the ball up the floor, and then you put Elliot probably on maybe a bigger guy and let RJ's hands and his footwork are elite. And I know we talk about his shot making all the time, but he's got such quick hands and such quick feet. He gets his hands on everything. So he maybe he guards the second best player or the best shooter, and then you let Elliot just be that third guy. There's so much things you can do with that. They can switch every ball screen. They can get into passing lanes. They can do some run and jump stuff. Again, I wish they would open up the defensive playbook as much as they open up the offensive playbook and really try to do some stuff. And I have no inside knowledge whatsoever. I think they will. I think we're going to see something different this year. I don't know what it is, but I just think if that's the lineup they want, we're going to see some stuff we haven't seen in the Hubert Davis era.
An example that came to mind for me, Coach, as I started to think about this was Baylor's championship team in 2020-21. And I went back and looked at the just strictly the heights of their starting lineup, which this starting five started literally every game that season. So there's no variance. They went 6'2", 6'3", 6'4", 6'5", and 6'10". So, maybe a little bit an inch or two taller at some of the backcourt positions, but pretty comparable across the board there. And beyond that, the top five in minutes played were 6'2", 6'3", 6'3", 6'4", 6'5", Coach. So nobody over 6'5" was in the top five of minutes played for that team. That is crazy to me. And then when you do you remember the national championship game, Coach? That game was over like 2 minutes in because Gonzaga couldn't do anything. Let me give you the starting lineup sizes of that Gonzaga team. Jalen Suggs, 6'4", Andrew Nembhard, 6'5", Joel Ayayi, 6'5", Corey Kispert, 6'7", Drew Timme, 6'10". Baylor was giving up some size to that team, and they couldn't do a thing with it. Coach, how do you make that happen?
Again, it's just that constant pressure. It's just getting people uncomfortable, getting them out of what they do. When you work all year trying to run your sets, and if you can't get the ball to the spots you want to get to, it makes it very difficult. You force teams to have to make plays. And in that case, they got them so much out of what they like to do and couldn't make enough plays. They end up taking bad shots. You end up getting out of a rhythm. And it makes it very hard offensively if you can't get to play the way you want to play. And if you don't have guys who can make plays or make shots at that particular day, it's going to be a really long, long game.
Man, and they're having to make like panicked decisions because you're forcing them into something, as you're saying, they're uncomfortable with. And that makes a lot of sense to me. And obviously, look, I make that Baylor comparison. I know it's not 1-to-1, Coach. Like, I hope no one hears me saying we're going to be Baylor 2020-21, right? Like, I'm just saying that's a possible example of what Carolina could do with a smaller starting lineup. So just take that for what it's worth. But Coach, I also know at your NAIA level, we're seeing a lot of teams similarly sized to this. And so I'm sure you're seeing up close and personal a lot of examples of this. What have you seen that's worked well?
Well, obviously, there's more guards out there than big men. So when it gets to the NAI level, your talented guys, most of them are special guards. So it's not unusual for us to see a 4-guard lineup, and sometimes even maybe 4 guards and a small forward, and people playing 5 out and driving it hard. And defensively, make the bigger guys have to handle the ball. Trap a little bit, get the ball out of the point guard's hands, make somebody else have to run the offense. It's the rhythm stuff that we try to make people uncomfortable, try to get them out of their rhythm, try to get them to do something that they're not normally used to doing. Put the ball in somebody's hands who's not used to making decisions and make them make decisions. Those are the type of things that I could see us doing, Carolina doing this year with their guards, and just really just creating havoc. And again, with a shot clock, if you can make somebody else have to bring the ball up the floor and make somebody else have to, all of a sudden, by the time they make their first pass into a wing entry or something, there's 15 seconds on the shot clock. Now all of a sudden they can't get to second, third options. And again, one of the things we work on a lot is late shot clock situations, because most teams, when they hear 10 seconds on that shot clock, that next pass, that next touch, shot's going up. And you can shorten possessions and speed them up in a way that can be very, very beneficial.
I like it. Lots of possibilities. I hope that's encouraging to you folks as you think about what could be for this team. And we get to see it in about a week and a half now for real against Elon on Monday, November 4th. Now, part of these guards is that they're going to have to do a great job taking care of the ball because Carolina needs to value every single possession. And the last 2 years, Carolina has back-to-back extremely low turnover percentages. In fact, the best of the Ken Palm era that they've ever had. My question is, can it continue this year? We'll unpack that in just a second. Right after I tell you about Prize Picks, which is the place that has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. Literally, all you got to do is pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. So run your game all season long on Prize Picks. I love how simple their concept is. It takes away concern over all these complicated strategies of who do I put in and how do I, whatever, man, it doesn't matter. And I really appreciate that Prize Picks has an injury insurance policy. Nothing's worse than picking someone and they go down on like the second play of the game. I'm petrified of that happening to me. But with Prize Picks, you don't have to worry about it because your lineups stay in play even if one of your lineup players gets injured. I like checking in on their weekly promos too, like Taco Tuesday, when Prize Picks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide you even more value. So all you got to do, again, you just look at a player's stat that they've picked out for you, and you just pick whether you think they're going to have more or less in a given game. So if you want to get in on that, download the app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, that's code LOCKEDONCollege on the Prize Picks app to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. I want to end the show today, Coach, by talking about turnover percentage. For those of you who aren't quite sure what that is, it's just basically how many of your possessions end with you turning the ball over. And last 2 years, Carolina has had the 2 lowest turnover percentages of the entire Ken Palm era, which goes back to the 96-97 season. So this encompasses the entire Roy Williams era, the kind of the tail end of the Dean Smith era, and the very beginning of the Hubert Davis era. Last year, Coach, they turned it over on 14.1% of the possessions, 20th in the nation. 22-23 season, even though things didn't go very well, they turned it over just 15.2% of their possessions, which was 25th in the nation. Coach, my question to you, knowing that they bring back somebody like RJ Davis, whose individual turnover percentage last year was just 7.4%, can they do it again?
Yeah, I think they can. And the percentage is the big word in this. It's not amount of turnovers, because I think the pace that they're going to play is going to be very different. The great thing about basketball is there's not one way to teach it, not one way to play it. And I always like to talk about the difference between Bobby Knight and Dean Smith. Bobby Knight was simplicity and execution. Dean Smith was variety and change. And Bobby Knight's comment on turnovers was that the team that turns it over the least or makes the least mistakes, victory favors them. Dean Smith was, and John Wooden especially. John Wooden had a quote about, he who's not making mistakes is probably not doing a whole lot either, positively. So I think there's times when you can have a good turnover if you're being aggressive and you maybe pitch it ahead. And those are the ones I don't yell at. If I have a guy who's being super aggressive and he throws it and he maybe just is a little bit long and throws it over somebody, I'm not going to yell at that guy because we're trying to make plays. It's the mindless, just bad passes, bad reads, or the lack of footwork. And those are the things I think that Hubert especially spends so much time on making sure that you don't have the unforced errors, just the simple things to make sure that they're maximizing every possession. So valuable. And I think that's why I could see the numbers and the experienced players. There's the guys who don't turn it over as much. They've already been there, done that. They've already figured out the length and the speed and the quickness of everybody. They should be able to make good decisions and not turn the ball over.
I love the point, Coach, that you made that turnover percentage is a tempo-free stat, right? It's not about total number, it's about what percent of your possessions. And so I think that's critical. We're not just talking about total turnovers or turnovers per game, because let's take Virginia versus Roy Williams era Tar Heels. Obviously, Carolina is going to have more total, lots of stuff, because they have more possessions than Virginia does. So this is about the amount of your possessions, folks. Just make sure you catch that. Now, one of the things from last year, Coach, is that Carolina loses Cormac Ryan and Harrison Ingram, whose turnover percentages were 9.9% and 10.7% respectively. And you got to find a way to replace that. One of the nice things is that both incoming transfers are pretty low as well. Cade Tyson, 10% last year. Van Allen Lubin, 9.9%, which is great for a big man. Like, by comparison, last year, Armando was 11.8%. Jalen Withers, 16.4%. But, Coach, I think the linchpin in all this is the Elliot Cadeau of it all, because he's the guy that has the ball in his hands the most. He had the third highest turnover percentage on the team last year at 19%. Which makes some sense, because he's the guy that's got the ball the most, and he was a freshman. He's going to make a lot of mistakes. Coach, in your ideal world, where you're thinking about the fact that there are some good turnovers of aggression rather than turnovers of lackadaisicalness, for example, what in your mind is the best, or a turnover percentage that you're looking for out of Cadeau?
Yeah, the examples you just gave kind of help us with the argument we had earlier in the discussion today, with Cormac and Harrison.
Great point.
Transfers, older guys. They've been there, done that. So obviously their percentages are way lower. I'd love to see Elliot cut his in half, and I know that might be a little bit too much to ask now, but he's got great experience with his pre-college days, playing at a very high level. Now he's played at a very high level his first year. Kind of went through the tough stretch, obviously, with maybe some of his confidence. But all that together, when he starts shooting the ball better, he'll turn it over less. And I know that doesn't make any sense, but it does from a coaching perspective. When you have that little bit of a swagger, you're knocking down shots, it allows you to even feel better about making decisions from a mental perspective, and he'll take care of the ball better because he's not worried about a shot anymore. He's not thinking about that while he's making that next decision. So I could see it going from 19 down to even 12 or 13 and be a huge impact, because that's gonna that's an extra 5, 6, 7 possessions a game.
Yeah.
That
especially as tempo goes up as part of that too.
Exactly. It only takes that one possession to be the difference in the game. So I think it's something that everybody's talking about, his shooting, but his decision making is going to get so much better this year as well.
Yeah. And I think that's such a big part of it that we need to watch out for, everyone, is there are going to be more possessions this year, or at least there better be, if we want to succeed at the level and play in the way we think we need to. But it's not about Elliot's number of turnovers, it's about the percentage of the turnovers. So that's the more key stat to watch out for as you look at this. Also, Jalen Withers needs to come down from his 16.4% last year. That's another one. And then obviously there's probably going to be some freshman mistakes from Ian and Drake. That's, again, as Coach said, going back to our first conversation today, that's part of what you have to deal with when you're utilizing freshmen as much as some teams will do so. So we'll keep up with that. Now, Coach, as we get out of here, I mentioned it at the beginning of the show. You are one day away from leaving for Milligan's first game of the year. And I just, we want to support not only the Tar Heels, but you and what you're doing. So just, would you give us a word about the start of your season and what you guys are about to go do?
Yeah, we're headed down to Tampa to play Florida College on Friday night at 7, and then Weber International at 1 o'clock on Saturday. So if anybody's in the Tampa area, come check us out. But two really good NAIA teams. Florida College went 28-5 last year, went to the national tournament, and we want to test ourselves early. So we got a long bus ride, about 12 hours on Thursday, and then after the game on Saturday back home. But again, two really good tests early for us. And the following week, we go to Northern Indiana and play in Huntington's Classic up there. Again, great NAIA school, great tradition. And we just want to play the very best we can early and get us ready for conference play.
I love it. And I know so many folks who listen to and watch the show are cheering for the Buffs and on your side. So folks, make sure you go, if you're in the area, check it out. Can folks live stream these games, Coach?
Yeah, absolutely. You just got to go to their website, and our home games will all be on, the milliganbuffs.com website, and you can watch all of our home games online. My mom watches all of hers back in Jersey, so that's cool. But yeah, if you just go to Florida Colleges, they'll actually just go to their schedule and click on the live link, and you can watch them live.
All right, folks. So if you want to go check out Coach Rob in action, in a different kind of action than you see him here, go do it. And you might see a very tall man who once played for the Tennessee Volunteers helping lead the way in the post for Carolina. Goodness, for Milligan, Coach, I defaulted there. Man, so excited for you and this new season. And man, we wish the best for the Buffs, and we're going to have to keep checking in on how the season's going. Guys, if you haven't gone and bought in Coach's book, Carolina Basketball School, make sure you do that, man. It's so fun. So many great stories and plays and drills and stuff like that, that you want to make sure you catch that. If you haven't subscribed to the show on video and audio, man, you're missing out there. Make sure you do that. It's very easy on YouTube. Just hit subscribe. Same on your favorite audio platform. If you're not in on the Locked On Tar Heels Discord chat, we'd love to have you there. It's free to join, and the link is in the show notes. Also, if you want to go even deeper, join the Locked On Tar Heels Insider Program, where you get to have direct one-on-one access to me. Really, really cool opportunity for you there, and a great way to help support the show. Guys, you know the drill. It's always a great day to be a Tar Heel. We're going to talk again tomorrow, but until then, peace.